Ladysmith may seem like a happy-go-lucky town with historical roots in the coal mine industry. But what most don't know is that Ladysmith was a host to an infamous drug kingpin. Arthur James Williams, nicknamed Art, was born in 1923. His mother died when he was young, and his father, already being the strict type, turned abusive. Although being referred to as highly intelligent by both his peers and his teachers, Art dropped out at age 14. When World War II rolled around in 1939, Art lied about his age and enlisted in the British Army at age 17. Not much is known about Art's time in the war. Some say he was a paratrooper, others say he spent some time in a German prisoner of war camp. What we do know is Art was later issued a medal for courageous service after being sent home injured. After being honorably discharged, Art moved to Canada and worked as a logger in both Edmonton and New Brunswick. This eventually led to him finding and marrying his wife, Margaret MacDonald. Art and Margaret Williams moved to Ladysmith, where Art created the new type of archery bow, the Williams bow. The Williams bow was quickly considered to be one of the finest ever made and was joining the ranks of brands like Hoyt and Martin Archery. He also had the idea to build an indoor archery range like you'd see at most gun ranges nowadays. You may think this is a lot of big new ideas coming from one guy, but the buck doesn't stop there. He also had the idea to create an outdoor archery course where people could walk along a path and shoot at various targets set up along the way. This would allow people to set up and practice at various angles and distances of shooting. Art really was an intelligent man. Alongside intelligence like this, Art had a strong anti-tax stance against the Canadian government. Federal and provincial workers would stop by Art's property to try and pick up any unpaid taxes, but it never worked. In one instance, when trying to look at the books, Art pointed to a pile of ashes on the ground and said, "Go ahead, there they are." Ken Sutherland, the former RCMP commander for Ladysmith, was quoted saying, "Art wasn't going to pay any taxes, and I don't think he ever did." Art's business went bankrupt, and his property was seized by the courts. Art was never properly convicted, but this started his bad rep with local law enforcement.
Up at night, yeah. Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. What keeps you up at night, yeah. Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. Oh, yeah, I think that we've all had enough. Sick of dealing with the old plan. They know that we're calling it wrong. You got me like, oh, yeah, I think that we've all had enough.
In the mid-1960s, drug trade was on the rise, with cocaine, MDA, and other like drugs being at the forefront of it. There was lots of money in it for those who dared to get their hands and criminal records dirty. For someone like Art, that wasn't a problem. RCMP across British Columbia were starting to see more and more MDA show up on the street. They were starting to suspect a drug ring forming. In no time at all, methylene dioxyamphetamine was circulating in large quantities across Western Canada and even in the US. There was a huge problem on the RCMP's hands. Art Williams was starting to be a more well-known name in the science front. He founded and ran the BC Institute of Mycology and had his own lab built in his property, which is where I'm standing now. His goal was to build the perfect hybrid mushroom that could be grown in both newspaper and human waste. This was a government-funded lab that he could study the ins and outs of mushrooms so he could create one of his own. This all sounded good, but the RCMP had a pretty good feeling that what was going on here wasn't just mushroom study. In late 1973, a raid occurred on the lab of Dale Elliott, Art's right-hand man. Art and Williams were both taken into custody, but only one was convicted, Dale. Art was released on a $10,000 bail and ordered to report once a week to a local RCMP, as well as to never leave BC. After this raid, the MDA trade only grew. Art bought a plane, learned to fly, and flew across to the mainland. These frequent flights made the RCMP believe that this wasn't just for leisure, but to deliver MDA to those across the pond. The RCMP sent an informant to get close to Williams. The informant was known to the police as E752. He assisted the RCMP in buying tens of thousands of dollars of MDA from Art, but never directly connected Art to the sale of drugs. Art always had a middleman. He never directly handled the drugs when it came to the day the drugs were being exchanged. This was intentional. E752 was never allowed in the labs or the barn where the drugs were being made and stored. Arndale knew about the informant the day he came, but decided to let him stay to make the RCMP believe they were being successful in their strategies. The RCMP made several seizures of MDA across Western Canada and were able to trace the gel caps back to Art and his drug ring. RCMP felt so close to ending this case, but not close enough. They needed one more thing: his lab. While hiking Mount Brenton, a hiker stumbled across Art in one of his labs. The hiker, recognizing who Art was, reported him to local police. Police started doing frequent sweeps of the area, but came up with nothing. After weeks of nothing, an officer working the case became frustrated and out of anger whacked a stick against the ground. What he did not expect was an audible hollow thump come from the ground. This thump was coming from an underground passageway leading to the lab. RCMP chose not to raid it, but instead install a bug in it. The police left other electronics in a nearby bush, and when they came back a few days later to retrieve it, it was gone, and the lab had been blown to bits. Art had discovered the RCMP's leftovers and wasn't too thrilled. After years of inconclusive searching, the RCMP finally got fed up and took a chance in arresting Art Williams. On August 16, 1977, Art was arrested on charges of conspiracy to traffic MDA, trafficking MDA, and possession of MDA to traffic. The RCMP took advantage of this arrest to search the barn up beside his property. What they found was not what they expected, but what they needed to put him away. After searching the barn, they found a wine cellar set up in many shelves. On a hunch, one of the investigators pulled on one of the shelving units and revealed a door behind it. This door was found to be 3-inch thick steel and was 3 feet by 3 feet. The RCMP continued to scour the place to find a key to get through this door. They eventually found it tucked inside a brick inside the furnace. Even after finding this key, it took 3 RCMP officers and 1 professional locksmith to get through the door. After getting through, they were presented with a chimney-like tunnel that went straight up to a submarine hatch. After crawling through this hatch, they found what they had been looking for this entire time: his lab. There was only one problem. There were no packages of MDA anywhere to be found. The police called in a lab specialist to come and examine the hidden lab for any traces of MDA. They were in luck. There were traces on the wall, on equipment, and just about every surface in there. The RCMP were so close to fully convicting Arthur James Williams. An era was coming to an end. An almost 2-year chase to catch the Wizard of Ladysmith was just about to be put to sleep, when on November 30th, 1977, he disappeared. Arthur was in Vancouver meeting with his lawyer. He flew from Nanaimo to Vancouver, piloting his own Cessna 182. On the return trip from Vancouver, he took off at approximately 9:30 in the evening, westbound to Nanaimo Airport. The problem was, he never arrived in Nanaimo or any other airport. RCMP reviewed the tapes from Vancouver Control Tower, and what they found was chilling. Art had initialized emergency procedures with Vancouver Tower shortly after takeoff. Art said he couldn't see, and that he was stuck in the clouds. Art was very unfamiliar with night flight, and was not used to flying by instrument. Art banked too steeply and was losing altitude fast. Stuck spiraling towards the Pacific Ocean, Art frantically tried to pull out, but to no avail. He was screaming, "I'm out of control! I'm out of control!" over the radio to the tower. If Art had listened to the Vancouver Tower's instructions to let go of the controls, there would have been a chance that the aircraft would have righted itself and Art would have had a less devastating impact with the water. However, this was not the case, and Art made contact with the Pacific Ocean shortly after. Search and rescue was sent out, but all that was found were scraps from the aircraft. A few weeks later, some debris was found 4 miles south of Campbell River. With it, a serial number linking back to Art's aircraft. No matter how much searching was done, Art's body was never found. Some speculate that Art faked his death and parachuted out before impact. The only problem with that is Art couldn't swim. He may have been a highly intelligent person, but swimming was one thing he couldn't accomplish. In the end, no evidence of what happened to Art was found. Art's younger sister, Gladys Little, recalls being confused as to why Art was even flying at night. Gladys states that Art hated flying at night and avoided it at all costs. Art had such a high standard for his own safety, causing Gladys to speculate that his aircraft must have been tampered with. 5 months later, on April 20th, 1978, Art was officially pronounced dead by request of his wife, Margaret Williams. No one truly knows what happened to Arthur James Williams. People speculate that he's living in South America, where he transferred all his money before disappearing. But no sighting of the MDA King have been confirmed. We are left with nothing but our own imaginations. So I ask you this. What do you think happened to Arthur?
He was flying, of course, at the time he disappeared. And the aircraft went into the ocean into about 900 feet of water. There was never an attempt made to raise the aircraft. But the speculation is that he crashed the aircraft into the ocean, swam out and was picked up by an accomplice somewhere and simply left the country, which would have been very, very easy to do by boat. You know, you could go out past the 12-mile limit probably and travel for a long distance by boat and then head to shore. I'm not saying that's what happened. We simply don't know what happened to him. He just disappeared. But we do know, of course, that his airplane crashed in the water, or at least landed on the water and it sank.
Guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I love